This lesson is on the surface area of cones and spheres. So here we have a cone, and the cone has a radius. It has a regular height, which goes from the middle of the circular parts down to the tip. And then we have the slant height. If we had a physical cone in front of us, you couldn't measure the height without destroying a cone, unless the cone was hollow on the inside, I guess. But you could measure the slant height, because the slant height is on an angle, and you measure from the tip to the start of the or to the base, I guess would be the best way of putting it. So those are the three measurements that come into play when we're talking about a cone. To find the surface area, we must know the radius and the slant height. Now, sometimes you won't be given the radius. Sometimes you'll be given the diameter. And if you're given the diameter instead of the radius, all you need to do is divide the diameter by 2, and that will give you the radius. The formula for the surface area of a cone is pi r squared, and the pi r squared part deals with the circular base and plus pi r s. Now pi r s deals with this part of the cone. Now, occasionally, you might not be given the slant height directly. You might be given the height and the radius. If you're given the height and the radius, then what you will need to do is you will need to use, because you'll be given height and radius, but you want to know what S is. So height, radius. So in that case, you have to use Pythagorean theorem to find the slant height. And Pythagorean theorem is something that you probably saw before high school. And if not, then you probably saw it in grade 9. And Pythagorean theorem is, in this case, it'll be S squared equals R squared plus H squared. Okay? S squared equals R squared plus H squared. All right. Try a couple questions where we have to find the surface area of the cone. Okay, so here we've got a cone. We've got two numbers given to us, 18, 25. Let's talk about what each of those things are. 18. What does 18 represent on this cone? What's that? Diameter. Do we want the diameter? No. So we got to divide it by 2. So if we divide it by 2, what's the radius? 9 centimeters. Perfect. Awesome. So the diameter of 18, we divide it by 2, and that gives us a radius of 9. What's the 25? What's that? Slant height. That is what we want. So all we need is R and S, and we can rock and roll and figure out the surface area. So let's go ahead and find the surface area. Surface area is pi r squared plus pi r s. Radius is 9. And the slant height is 20. Order of operations comes into play here. Of all the things that you see here, what comes first? We got exponents, that's right. So what's 9 squared? Beautiful. 81 pi plus, then we have 9 and 25. If we multiply those together, what do we get? $225 pi, thank you very much. And then we will go ahead and add the 81 and the 225s together. And that will give us 306 pi. And then it's just a matter of multiplying pi times 306. And that gives us what? We get 961.33 centimeters squared. Just a little note that last digit, that last 3 was rounded. It was a 2, but the digit to the right of it is a 7, so that bumps that up to a 3. Don't forget to round your numbers appropriately when you write them to 2 decimal places. So there we go. That's the answer. It's 961.33 centimeters squared. That is the surface area of this cone. We've got another example right here. What's the surface area of this cone? So let's identify what the numbers that are here mean. 9 feet. What is that? What's that? It's the radius? Yep. 40 feet. What's that? It's the height. And in this case, we don't have what we want because we want to know what S is. So what we need to do is we need to look at Pythagorean theorem, knowing that this is 9 feet, this is 40 feet, but we want to know what S is. We want to know what that S is so we can go ahead and use the surface area formula. So from our little blurb on the last page, we know that S squared equals R squared plus H squared. R is 9, so that's 9 squared. H is 40, so that's 40 squared. What's 9 squared? $81. Very good. 40 squared is? $1,600. Awesome. And if we put those together, what do we get? Fantastic. And now we just need to take the square root of that in order to find the slant height. So what is the square root of 1681? Should be 41 feet. And now we know what the slant height is. And so because we know what the slant height is, we can go ahead and figure out the surface area because we need to know what the slant height is. If we don't know what the slant height is, we can't find the surface area. So surface area is pi r squared plus pi rs Radius is 9, and we're going to square it. And the slant height is 41. Once we have the radius and the slant height substituted into the formula, we follow the exact same steps that we did for the previous question, meaning that the first thing we do is the squared or the exponent. So 9 squared, it's still 81, so it's 81 pi. Now we have 9 times 41. What's that? What's that? Thank you, thank you, thank you. 369, you betcha. Times pi. And now all we'll do is we'll take the 81, add it to 369. What do we get when we do that? 450 pi, you betcha. And then we'll just take our calculator, go pi times 450 equals, and what do we get? So 1,413.72, and the units are feet, so it's feet squared or square feet. So obviously in this question, there's a little bit of extra stuff, and that extra stuff is the use of Pythagorean theorem in order to figure out what the slant height is. So just be on the lookout for that. Just be on the lookout for that. The practice questions that you will do, most of them will not require you to find S. But there will be a couple that do. So just be on the lookout for those. And even if you don't do the whole practice assignment, make sure you at least try 1 or 2 of the ones where you have to find S. Okay? Okay. So that's how we find the surface area of a cone. Now we're going to move on to, let's go ahead and the sphere. And we just have one example after we talk about it, because it is fairly straightforward. The surface area of a sphere is given by the following formula. Surface area is 4 pi r squared. So there's only one measurement when we talk about a sphere, and that is the radius of the sphere. And once again, just a reminder, if you're not given the radius, if you're given the diameter instead, just make sure to divide it by 2 so that you know the radius. Because there's no spot in the formula where you can put in the diameter. So you have to use the radius. So if you're given the diameter, cut in half, there's your radius. So, determine the surface area of the sphere. So, formula is SA is 4 pi r squared. So that's 4 pi. What's our radius? 11. Because this is 22, and that's the diameter. You divide that by 2, and you get 11. So that's where we get 11 from. What's 11 squared? Good stuff. And now to figure out the answer, what we're going to do is we're going to take pi times 4 times 121. So pi times 4 times 121. What do we get? Excellent. We get 1,520.53 feet squared. That is the surface area of the sphere.